What's up, guys? Welcome to this episode of Rick's Hobby Hut. I hope you all had some wonderful holidays and a happy new year. And in this episode, I'm going to be showing you how I go about painting my storm shields for my shadow glaive. So let's head on over to the table and get to work on this guy.
Anvil of War! Rick's Hobby Hut!
So I have to apologize in advance to you guys. When I went back and reviewed the footage for the painting portion of this video, unfortunately my hair got in the way a lot because I zoomed in a fair amount, and because it is tiny and intricate work. I will be doing my best to edit out as much as possible, but I am forewarning you, there may be some slight portions of my hair making it into the video. So that aside, let's get to work. And to start this model off, or to start this storm shield off, we're going to be using two colors as the base tones through my airbrush. The first one being Charred Brown from Vallejo Game Air, the second one being Ushabti Bone from the Citadel line. So I'm going to be using the Charred Brown as a base tone. I'm going to be spraying up underneath at the bottom of it to create that darker shadow at the bottom of the shield. Once the Charred Brown is done, I'm going to be using my Ushabti Bone through my airbrush. I will be using Vallejo Flow Improver to thin it out. The reason being is, I've said before, it acts as a retardant, gives you better working time in the pot. Don't use a thinner because it will dry a lot quicker. So that being said, let's go ahead and do this, and I will be creating that transition on the shield from the top down. Once I've let the airbrush work dry, I'm going to be going ahead and I'm going to be painting just a couple of the little metallic bits using Retributor armor on it, like the little coils on the side of the shield itself, and then a couple of little details on the front of the shield. The reason why I'm painting this right now is that when I wash, I always wash my gold with Abrax Earthshade, and then I go over it with Nuln Oil, and I don't highlight it because it gives me that nice burnished look, and that will be the theme throughout the gold for this video. Now that it's painted, now that the gold is painted using Retributor armor, we're going to go ahead and use Abrax Earthshade, and we're going to wash the entire shield front and back. Be very careful because it is a flat surface, not to let it pool anywhere. Do a very smooth, even coat. Take your time, and don't play with it too much, but make sure it doesn't pool in any of the areas. Once that is dry, we're going to go and use my favorite metallic of all time, and we're going to use Vallejo Chainmail Silver. to paint the metallic parts, the silver metallic parts on the shield. Specifically the embossing on the right side of the shield, and then the little, all the little wires and the screen on the back of the shield. Now, when you're painting the actual embossing on the shield itself, I'm not so much as painting in strokes. What I'm doing is I'm more or less dabbing it into the crevices and making sure it gets into all the places that I need it. Be very careful at this point because we don't want to ruin any of that airbrush work that we've done in the previous step. So take your time with this and make sure it's nice and clean and you're happy with it. Once the metallics are painted, we're going to go ahead and we're going to paint the red portions of it, which is the Inquisitional Eye and the border of the shield. And for this, I'm going to be using corn red. And take your time with this, and we're just going to spend a decent amount of time painting that Inquisitional Eye, the border, making sure we don't let any of that paint overlay onto that beautiful white bone that we've already done. Once that's dry, I'm going to go back with my Retributor armor and I'm going to paint the skull on top of the Inquisitional Eye. The reason why I didn't paint all of that ahead of time is when I'm painting a model, just like when you're painting layers to create an effect, I look at a model in layers itself as I paint it. So I'm working from the deepest recesses to the highest so that I get so I'm not pulling my hair out later on, trying to paint those deeper areas and get that color in there. This way it's just a nice even flow and it's not going to make me lose any more of my hair. Once that skull is painted, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to use Caliban Green, and we're going to just lay in the base colors for the screen on the back of the shield, as well as a couple of little buttons, as well as the eye on the front of that skull, the little servo eye that you see in the very front of the shield. Once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to wash the the skull in Agrax Earthshade on the front of the shield. Again, like I said before, the reason why I do this is because I like to get a very nice burnished gold by using both Agrax Earthshade and the Nuln Oil. So go ahead and do that and just let it dry quickly. Once that wash is dry, what we're going to do is we're going to take another wash, which is going to be Nuln Oil, and we're going to wash all of the embossing on the right hand side of the shield, as well as the gold, the red, the corn red that we've done on the border, as well as that Inquisitional eye in the very center of the shield. And take your time with this, because you don't want to splash any of that Nuln Oil all over that beautiful Shabti bone color that we've already gone ahead and done with the airbrush. It's just not going to look nice. So take your time. Make sure you take your time with this and be precise with that wash, because it'll get away from you if you're not careful. Now that the washes are dry, we're going to go in and we're going to highlight all of that, the corn red that we've gone ahead and put on. And what we're going to be using for this is we're going to be using Evil Sun Scarlet along with Wild Rider Red. Now, the Evil Sun Scarlet is going to be our mid-tone, and I'm going to be working with it as very much a glaze consistency, almost like a, what is it, the watercolors that you get as a kid in the dry watercolors when you were painting those watercolor paintings when you were in school. And that's the kind of consistency we're going for, a nice very thin wash, and we're just going to build the saturation along in between the Inquisitional eye as well as the border of that shield. Now if you notice too, when I'm painting that eye in the center of the shield, what I'm doing is I'm not putting a lot of color towards the base of where the skull is, sitting over that eye. The reason being is I want to give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of contrast between where that the golden skull and crossbones are, as well as that Inquisitional eye. So what I'm doing is, like I said, I'm working outwards and dragging the paint outwards and concentrating more of the color to the outside of it to give it that contrast. Once we're done with the Evil Sun Scarlet, we're going to take the Wild Rider Red, and we're just going to use that as selective highlights, because the light is coming down, he's holding it out in front of him like this. We're just going to be selecting some highlights along the top of the border, as well as that Inquisitional eye, anywhere where you think that the light would be hitting, to give it that three-dimensional look. Now that we've finished all the highlights, we're going to just add the final details to the front of that shield and that border. Is we're going to take chainmail silver, Nuln Oil, and Vallejo Model Air steel. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the chainmail silver initially, and we're going to just put little dabs on each of those bolts all the way around the border. Be careful, take your time. It is a very, very, very tiny little piece to do, but the overall effect, I love the way it comes out. And once that chainmail silver is dry, we're going to wash it quickly with a Nuln Oil just to give it that little, a little bit more of a depth and a little bit more popping off that red. Once dry, just go back and do the same step with the Vallejo Model Air steel. Again, using a fine brush, a little dab on each one of them, and boom, you bring the color and those nice rivets to the forefront of that shield. Now that all those little details are done, we're going to finish off the little computer screen on the back along with the buttons and the little eye, the servo eye in the center of the skull. Now the colors you're going to need for this is going to be Warpstone Glow, Moot Green, and a pure white. It doesn't matter what white you're using. You can use the Citadel. I'm using the Vallejo model color white. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the Warpstone Glow as a thin glaze. We're just going to work it out on the palette, thin it out a little bit, and what we're going to do is we're going to trace around the left side of the screen. If you're looking at it, it's kind of like this, and we're going to paint with the Warpstone glaze with the Warpstone Glow this bottom left hand portion of the screen, and we're going to start creating that nice green glow to that screen. Once you're happy with that, we'll take Moot Green and we're going to thin it out in the same way, and we're going to do another highlight along the side of that. Once that's done, we're going to mix in a little bit of the Vallejo, the white, and we're just going to make it more of a paler green. And again, I'm going to do a thinner highlight and more closer to an edge highlight. I'm also going to do a couple of dots on the right hand side of it just to give it kind of that little glisten and a little bit of variation in the screen itself. I should mention also I did this on the little skull eye on the front. Same thing, but instead of painting any shapes, what I'm doing is I'm just doing the little dots of layers and building that color up again on that little servo skull eye on the front. Once that's done, we're going to take the Biel-Tan wash, and we're just going to put a small little glaze, a little bit of wash inside that screen, as well as that eye on the front and the little buttons, just to bring all those blends together and finalize that color. Once that's done, we only have two highlights, left to do on the shield, which is the bone color highlights. And for that, we're going to be using the Ashapti bone again in conjunction with Screaming Skull. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take the Ashapti bone and thin it out. Not very much. We're still going to be using a layer consistently, but enough to make it flow easy on your brush. And what you're going to do is you're just going to use the edge of your brush and trace around the entire outside of the shield, any of the little bits that are highlighted, that need highlighting, with that Ashapti bone. Once we finish with the Ashapti bone, I'm going to take the Screaming Skull and we're going to do some final highlights just in some certain areas to bring out some more contrast in that shield. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it on the top edge, all the way along the top of the shield, any of those parts that are kind of more towards that would be standing out and catching the sunlight, and leave the bottom darker area in Ashapti bone. Now that all the highlights done, you have one beautiful looking storm shield. I am going to take it and do the battle damage and everything off screen or off camera for the model itself. I'm not going to do it in this video because I do have a video specifically dedicated to how I did the battle damage on the shields and my jump captains and all that. So if you're looking at how to do that battle damage, go ahead and check out that video. But as far as completion wise, this is the completed shield.
Sponsored by
That does it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and you picked up some tips and tricks along the way. It is the first episode of 2020. If you have any questions or comments about what you'd like to see in future episodes, leave them down below. I'll check them out and see what I can do. But for now, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, let's keep this mini train rolling.